clinical psychologist and psychotherapist in New York City. In 1972, folks, before the American Psychiatric Association got rid of homosexuality as a mental disease, he wrote Society and the Healthy Homosexual. Even earlier than that, he coined the term homophobia. We're going to talk to you all about that, all that history and all you've done for lesbian and gay rights over the years. But you're here because your society, the American Psychological Association, is finally considering, essentially condemning what's called reparative therapy, trying to convert, you know, gay people into straight people. Why do you think this is finally coming about, and do you think they're going to do it?
I think the therapy profession is usually last to make judgments. That society always starts out with an opinion, and therapy usually copies it, and there's a groundswell now, you can't do this. The real reasons why you shouldn't convert are that it makes you hate yourself when you try to convert. That the very effort to say that you're not something which you are makes you condemn what you are, and you despise yourself. When I was a kid, there were hundreds of ads for skin bleaches for blacks. Well, anyone who applied one of those bleaches to get a little white, or who lied about being black, had to hate himself or herself. And if you are gay, you are condemning homosexuality, not only all other gays, but yourself. And I can tell you that I've seen gay people work heavily on conversions and then commit suicide. And there's one famous case in Philadelphia that Dr. Spitzer got involved with, and I knew the people very well and pleaded. And if you don't accept yourself, you're going to hate yourself. You have a choice.
We spend a lot of time on this show making a distinction between orientation and behavior. And the right wing argues, and this is simply me exploring the devil's advocate position, but they argue that there are that people who have a strong religious conviction that may be self-loathing about homosexuality have a right to try to amend their behavior, if not their orientation, through therapy.
Maybe they have a legal right, Ann. But I spent a year living in Norwich State Hospital, and there was a guy there who cut his arm off because it said in the Bible, if your arm offends thee, cut it off. And he had the legal right to cut it off, and he brought a writ of habeas corpus to get out of the hospital. It also says in the Bible, if your eye offends thee, cast it out, and he did that too, so he was one arm and one eye. And you have a right, but you only live once. If you had many lives, maybe you'd come back whole and gay and all the rest of it and happy. But it's not a matter of right, it's a matter of what works for you. There's nobody going to give you anything back after you make these sacrifices. And when I did coin the word homophobia, I couldn't get two therapists in the city to agree with me. There wasn't a single therapist practicing who would say, oh, I'm homosexual, and or even I'm a homophile and I'm practicing. So it's not a matter of right, it's a matter of what you do to your own head, what you do to your brain.
And in fact, define homophobia.
I'd say, from my point of view, any phobia is an irrational dread or withdrawal, a reaction. In the case of gays, who are gay, they hate themselves, which is what we're talking about. In the case of others, they want to eliminate the stimulus. If I have a phobia against heights, I don't want to go near any height. If I have a phobia against gays, gay women or gay men, I want to get them out of my sight, which means punish them, annihilate them if possible. If I can't do that, go as far as I can in that direction.
Is that distinct from anti-gay prejudice and simple hatred of gay people?
Simple hatred of gay people seems to be some kind of, if I hate you, I should be able to sit next to you and have a conversation with you. So this is much more irrational than the ordinary hatred. As a matter of fact, I had an interesting experience back in the 70s. Frank Kameny, who you know, brought me down to Washington, D.C. to get on a TV show.
Great.
This is the founder of the Mattachine Society,
right.
A gay activist since the late 50s, early 60s.
Right. And an individual, a guy who loved himself since birth.
Yes.
And anyhow, so I'm down there, and Frank and I are talking, and there was a woman producer, and he left the room, and I noticed this woman was alone with me. She was terrified. I'm like, what the hell is she afraid of me for? You know, and I'm not even gay. And I realized at some point she just had that automatic response, being alone in a room with a homosexual, which made me think of the Oscar Wilde's brother said, I don't know why they call him immoral. Any woman's safe with him.
Well, you know, we sort of assume that homophobia or hatred has been taught through the ages, and that we are slowly, in the current day, changing that as we come out and introduce ourselves to people and
Right.
sort of get rid of the images of us with horns. But do you have any better explanation of why people are so afraid?
I think there are a number of reasons why people resent gays, and I've heard a couple of them. One is, the least of them is, they're going to trigger something in me, it's going to rub off on my child, you know, as if sexuality rubs off. You know, the same as they don't want to touch a black person. I don't want to get contaminated by this. Another reason is, there's, of course, the religious reasons, but there's a fundamental fear. Gays have it better than we do, you know. Gay men don't have the obligations. Gay women don't have to have children. They don't have to do all these things that we have to do. Well, they want the obligation isn't there, and there's a certain resentment of people who they think have it better. So
Kind
we'll
of a
make
jealousy.
Jealousy. We'll make them have it worse. You think you got it better? We'll show you what better is. We'll beat your brains out. Then you'll have it worse.
I also read something years ago in the New York Times science section, my source for everything, that said the natural organizing principle of the brain is to simplify. And I wonder to what extent people are afraid of complexity or diversity.
I think that's a great point. I hadn't thought of it that way, but there is a simplification, and any kind of group you can rule out of, you know, well, he's not one of us. If you can say that, then you're getting a little more sympathy. Of course, within the closed group, once you simplify, you get more hatred and more battles back and forth among your own uniform group than you're going to get if you have variety. But it's hating yourself. You know, there was an interesting moment when I was on a TV show in Chicago. This homophobia was pretty early in the game. And I was getting phone calls, and a call came in, and it was a woman who said, my husband's coming right to the phone. He wants to ask you a question.
Hold on, please.
Hold on, please. So I said, this guy's going to hate homosexuals because he's got his wife calling up and introducing him. And sure enough, he let out some curse, some imprecation against gays you wouldn't believe, and threatened to come down to the studio and beat my brains out, whereupon a gay woman said, my lover is a policewoman and we'd like to go home with you to the Drake. And I said, I'll take it.
Well, talk about those early days, because when you wrote Society and the Healthy Homosexual, which I remember reading as a child. No.
I'm willing to be old.
You're not that young.
I'm so proud of it that I'm willing to be old.
I was just out of high school.
Me too.
You too. All right, wait a minute, folks.
No, it's
Seriously.
true. It's true. I'm older than Andy.
Your profession, your profession defined this as a mental illness.
Right.
Gay people who came out were drummed out of the...
You just didn't have a chance. And the interesting thing is, Kinsey wanted to get some of his people. He had a wonderful lawyer. He was doing sex in the prisons. So he took a friend of mine, Clarence Tripp, with a name like Clarence. You're off to a bad start anyhow.
C.A. Tripp, we know him
C.A.
as.
Tripp,
Yeah.
right. And you can see why. No one liked the name Clarence
Yes.
in those days. So anyhow, he said, Tripp, I want you to meet this guy and spend a little time with him, and then bring your lover Ollie around after he gets to like you, and we'll convert him a little toward accepting it. It worked like a dream. And the guy said, oh, I didn't know you were homosexual, you know, whatever the word was back then, and it worked. Well, I tried to get Tripp and a few others to meet my therapist friends in the early 70s. And these people, when they found out, even if they liked the guy originally, when they found out he was gay, out. They couldn't take it. That really convinced me how I already knew it was phobic, but boy, was that strong.
But you think the profession in some ways has not come that far.
Yes, I still know, I talk to a lot of therapists, and they're still secretly happy when the person says, I think I'll try going out with a member of the opposite sex. She seems pretty nice. Now, to this gay woman, pretty nice, the guy might seem pretty nice because he's gentle or this. The therapists jump at this. They're wild. I think underneath, the great majority of therapists still want to convert you, and they still don't see happiness.
And is this because the schooling is still way behind the times?
First of all, it gives them work. It gives them a problem. It gives them something to work on. It's income producing. You know, if you see a couple, and when I was way back, even before Andy was in college.
Yeah.
I remember at Columbia when I was getting my doctorate, and there were two gay guys, there were homosexual men there, and they were really having trouble in a relationship, and I was told this is the course that this kind of involvement, this kind of love takes. They often say it with women, this is the course that love takes when it takes this form. And I had to turn off my tape recorder, because I would have been in trouble if I backed and said, what are you guys killing each other for here? You know what I mean? This is so trivial. You're fighting about a few dollars.
So why do you think then that the American Psychiatric Association did vote in 1973 to declassify it, and no longer make homosexuality a mental illness if it was so anti-gay?
I think there was a lot of pressure brought to bear. They voted only slightly in favor of the change, and I think that they felt they could go on doing their thing anyhow, and they have. And I think anyone out there who's gay, who is considering that he might be gay, which means he probably is, or she probably is, if you think you might be. Anytime I used to get these phone calls, well, I have this lover, and I don't, and it was a highly conventional person otherwise. Well, if you have a lover, and you're going against convention, and you're a conventional person, you must have a pretty strong draw in that direction. So, you know, as a rule, but I think that the profession isn't, first of all, business is a big issue. I was always told you'll destroy your practice when you come out with homophobia, and I spoke in the city council and things. Meanwhile, I had more people calling me than God, you know. I had to really, I didn't want an entire gay practice because it's no fun to be in any single homogeneous group. But I do think that there's an awful lot of resentment of gay life and gay possibility.
Now, what do you think about the new tactic of, you know, XX gays, organized often by Soul Force, Mel White's religious activist group, confronting the reparative therapy movement, going to the Exodus International Conference?
And what are they saying exactly?
They're saying, look, we were harmed by reparative therapy, and we're here to testify to that and to peacefully but forcefully confront this.
I love it. I love it. I just wish more people would do that. The trouble is, when you try to convert, you hate yourself and feel you failed. Others were able to jump over this chasm. Why couldn't I convert? And so it's this, again, this phrase, scattered community, that's so bad, of all these people who try to convert. I saw one fantastic study where a guy said, I tried to convert these, I tried to convert these 20 transsexuals. It was pretty successful. 4 of them converted, 6 left the country. You know, and it had this kind of thing where every one of them, a couple of them went back and they're calling me next year. And you can look at the data any way you want. But the thing is, you know, there's a wonderful phrase of Thoreau, public opinion is a weak tyrant alongside private opinion. And it's your own opinion that's going to make the difference in the end. And I can only plead to people, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. I'll tell you, Walter Matthau told me a great joke that had meaning to me. Sometimes you hear something and it exaggerates. Where a father says to a boy, if you masturbate, you're going to go blind. And the boy says, Daddy, can't I keep it up until I need glasses? And the thing is, keep it up until you need glasses. I mean, that's got a huge scope and meaning in the world. Keep it up until you need glasses. The big thing about therapists, a lot of them, you know, and I've trained 100 therapists and I'm pretty successful at what I do, is if I see someone in my office who lights up and he's happy when he plays the piano and he's not happy when he's going to medical school and he can make a living playing the piano, I don't just say quit the piano, go to medical school, there's more money in it. And these people, you should be alert, like litmus paper, to when people are happy. You know, I've had people in my office, I know it's hard to believe, but it's hard to believe, but true, where I'd say to the woman, if you never had sex with a man again, how would you feel? I think I'd feel okay about that. If you had never had sex with another one, are you crazy? You know, and you wonder, how could someone hear that and say, you really ought to go back to your husband.
Well, how can so many people say, happiness, what's that as a goal? Or,
Right.
I don't understand what this
Right.
happiness business
If misery
is.
is your goal, convert. I couldn't agree with you more.
But it seems literally crazy to me that so much of the population seems so resistant to the idea of happiness.
They're afraid of happiness. They
They
really
are.
are. Maimonides, like 11th century great Jewish philosopher, said that insanity is not taking what's given to you.
Yeah.
And this is really not taking what's given to you.
We've
It's
only
pretty weird.
got another minute, and I feel like we're just getting started. But you also think that people need to be involved in their own liberation, to work for justice.
Absolutely.
At some level. Do you encourage your patients to do that?
I
Do they
encourage
do that?
everybody, if you have somebody to do something for on this earth, you're not lonely. The minute you start doing something for others, whether it's your dog or your cat or a lover or posterity, you feel not alone. I can't tell you what the homophobia identity has done for me. It's given me a feeling of a world out there. Every time I hear the word, I feel good about it.
Even though you're against it. We are out of
Thank
time.
you, George. Thank you to the viewers. We will see you next week. Be happy.
Thank you. You guys are great. You really are.
Thank you for all you've done
I'd like
for
to
us.
get to know you better.